Today we are going to be talking about Lightning addresses and specifically what are the different efforts underway to make self-custodial Lightning addresses easier. And as part of that, we're going to go through a tutorial of how you can set up your very own self-custodial custom Lightning address. Let's jump in. So if you're brand new to Lightning addresses, they look very similar to an email address, right? I type in whatever at whatever.com. So you may have seen similar things floating around on Twitter or Nostr or whatever. For example, I have ragermajor at getalby.com. That is a Lightning address that supported wallets can use to send sats. And so that's a big deal, right? You're making the process of sending sats as similar to folks as sending an email, something they're already very familiar with. Furthermore, this avoids the typical Bolt 11 invoicing experience where if I want to receive sats, I first have to create an invoice, send it to the other individual, and then that individual can pay that invoice in order to send me sats. In this case, you can just send the sats directly to a Lightning address. And just quickly, what's happening behind the scenes is that a Lightning address is really just a human readable form, something called LNURL pay. LNURL is basically just a normal web protocol, right? When you see HTTPS in, a website, that is the sort of normal HTTP web protocol, and that is what LNURL is using in order to communicate information over the internet to a Lightning node. So think of it as this sort of bridge from Lightning nodes to web servers so that information can get passed in various ways to make this overall experience easier. And so here's where we start to see challenges when it comes to doing this in a self-custodial fashion, right? Because there are an increasing number of people running their own Lightning node, whether that's a standalone device through something like an Umbrel or a Start9 Embassy or whatever it is, or you have an increasing number of options. Just download an app on your phone and that is running a little Lightning node within it, something like Breeze Wallet, something like Phoenix, run Mutiny Wallet in your web browser. So it's becoming increasingly accessible for individuals to use the Lightning Network in general in a self-custodial fashion, which is great news. But it is still very difficult to have a self-custodial Lightning address because it requires you to run an actual web server, right? It's not just running your Lightning node. You also have to run the web server in order to do the LNURL pay stuff that Lightning addresses are based on. And thus, we've not surprisingly seen a proliferation in custodial Lightning addresses with the likes of Zebedee, GetAlby, Wallet of Satoshi. In fact, I think there was some analysis done to look at the Zap activity on Nostr. And if you're new to Nostr, I've done a video on that. But I think it was more than 90% of Zap activity is happening from custodial Lightning addresses, most notably Wallet of Satoshi. Now, I did a tutorial recently on Wallet of Satoshi. I think it actually is the most simple way to use the Lightning Network, but it is a custodial solution. So again, I think it is the case that many people on this planet are never going to use the Lightning Network in a non-custodial fashion. I just think that's the reality of it. I don't even necessarily think that that has to be driven solely by technology. I think that's going to partly be driven by just preference and people wanting, to trust a custodial, similar to what they do today with, their banks and all that. But despite what I think is an inevitability there, we obviously still want easier ways to do everything self-custodially. And so now that we've got the kind of Lightning piece well on its way, we also need to make Lightning addresses specifically easier. So there's a couple methods that are starting to move the needle. You have these federated Lightning address services that will offer you a domain name that basically forwards to your node. So you're still trusting that service, but it is strictly non-custodial in the sense that your funds are always your funds. You're not trusting your funds to anyone else. And the little tutorial I'm going to take you through today is using what's called a bridge server, which sort of accomplishes a similar thing. you're basically using someone else's server to do the web server part, the HTTP stuff. So again, this is not a perfectly trustless option. It is non-custodial or self-custodial in the sense that your funds are your funds and they're always going to be your funds. However, the way to think about this is when a user is trying to pay your Lightning address, what's happening behind the scenes is that your Lightning node is being requested for an invoice via the LN URL pay request. And so you're trusting the bridge server to faithfully return that invoice information that your node has created instead of, for example, its own. But nonetheless, if you want to create a custom, like your own custom domain and your own custom Lightning address that is non-custodial, this is, I think, one of the best ways to do it currently. So I wanted to at least go through it. And I'm going to be using, as part of today, Fiat Joff's bridge server. Fiat Joff, for those not aware, was the creator of the Nostr protocol. And so while, we always want to cultivate the sort of don't trust, verify mentality, I do think Fiat Joff has, earned through proof of work, respect in the community. And one would imagine that, if he did act maliciously with his bridge server, that it would have ramifications for other projects he's involved in. And so hopefully that serves as kind of a disincentive. So again, not telling you to go off and do this, but I want to demonstrate how you can do this today. And so let's jump right into it. All right, so first, the ingredients to get started are a fewfold. One is you're going to need a Lightning node that is set up and that you have access to the macaroons as well as some other information. So for those not familiar, macaroon is kind of like a fancy internet cookie. It helps with authentication in distributed systems. But what I'm going to be taking you through is my Umbrel node. So I've got my Umbrel node set up. I have done a whole set of tutorials, by the way, on setting up an Umbrel node from scratch, how to get your Lightning node set up, how to create channels, how to manage liquidity. So I'm going to be flashing some of those videos up and linking them in the description down below. But that is sort of prerequisite one. And then the second thing you're going to need is a domain. And so I've got this handy ianmajor.xyz domain. And so you need a domain and you need access to updating the DNS records. So you need some sort of control panel. And so now really what we need to do is set up a total of 4 new records that you will see displayed here. So number 1 is a CNAME record. And now the fact that I'm using GoDaddy as my registrar, I think is actually making this a little bit interesting. So what I found, ideally what you would do is in this CNAME record, you would just put the @ symbol, which represents your domain, right? That would represent ianmajor.xyz. But I wasn't able to do that in GoDaddy. And so after some research, it seems that if you have other records referencing @ so I've got these name server records that I can't delete, right? GoDaddy, that's just sort of how it is. They don't give you the ability to delete that. And so what I've done instead is I've put in the www subdomain for the CNAME record. And then what I'm putting in for the value or the data is the website we were looking at earlier. It's bridgeaddr.fiatjoff.com. Here is an alternative example that I found on one of the community forums in Umbrel. Shout out, by the way, to this user LVONM. This user has listed out a lot of these instructions in a very helpful fashion. And this individual appears to be using Namecheap as their registrar. And it looks like you have a lot more kind of flexibility in how you do that. So just one note there as a nuance for that I found, at least for GoDaddy. And beyond the CNAME record, we're going to add a total of 3 TXT records. One is very simple. It's this TXT record that has _kind. And then because I'm using the www subdomain, right? So basically what that means is that when someone goes to www.ianmajor.xyz, it is going to actually resolve that to bridgeaddr.fiatjoff.com. That is what the CNAME record is doing here. And so I need to append the www to each of the TXT values. If I was able to just use the @ right? If I didn't have, those restrictions, I would just have _kind. That's it. And I will simply put LND as the value. right? And of course, that is the kind or the implementation type of Lightning that I am using in this case. Again, refer to the bridgeaddr.fiatjaf.com website where you can see instructions for other implementations of Lightning. The next piece I'm going to grab is this _host, and again, in my case, .www. And this is basically the onion address where external traffic can reach my node. And so the way to get to that, again, I'm using Umbrel as my example here, but really all you're looking for is basically the IP or domain along with the port. Because I'm running my Umbrel over Tor, it is an onion address that I'm pulling, and that is going to be the default for most Umbrel nodes. And so how you can do that is you come over to your Lightning Node app, and you are going to click the 3 dots in the top right, and you'll go to Connect Wallet, and here is where you'll have all that sort of information. And so by default, like most of Umbrel nodes are going to have the REST Tor mode as the default option there. And so what you're going to do is you're going to grab this LND Connect URL. But then you're going to do a couple transformations to it. First, you're going to replace the LND Connect text with HTTPS. So instead of LND Connect, it should say HTTPS. And then what you're going to do is you're going to remove everything after the port. In my case, the port is 8080. And so in this very long LND Connect URL, you are going to remove everything after, in that case, the 8080. I suppose another way you could do this is by grabbing the host field. You'll slap the HTTPS : //, then you've got your host, and then you would just have to put a :8080 on the end. So that's 2 ways to arrive at the same field that you will put in to the DNS record. Okay, and then the final thing is we are going to grab our macaroon. Now, you will see that there's a macaroon on this Connect Wallet menu, but as a best practice, again, you can put that macaroon in, but as a security best practice is what we are going to do is what's called baking a new macaroon specifically for this purpose of enabling the self-custodial Lightning address effectively. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over to ThunderHub. And again, I've done a whole tutorial on using ThunderHub to manage your Lightning node. ThunderHub, there's Ride the Lightning, there's others, are simply tools whereby you can more easily manage your node. You have more advanced functionality with how you can manage your channels and your routing fees and all this different stuff. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the Tools menu on the left. I am going to go to the Bakery section, and I'm going to hit Bake a Macaroon. And so you can see there's all these permissions. So again, a macaroon is like a fancy cookie that's helping with authentication. And so basically what I want to do here is I want to say yes to create invoices, but no to everything else. And so you can see why this is recommended as a best practice. For that other macaroon that's embedded in your Lightning Node app within Umbrel, that guy is going to have permissions to everything. And so by doing this, all we're permissioning is the ability to create invoices, none of this other stuff. And so what we can do is come down and we say bake new macaroon. And boom, so we now have both a base 64 encoding and a hex encoded. And it doesn't matter, you can copy either of the formats, and that is the final value that you will put in this last TXT record, which we will name _macaroon, again, .www, in my particular case, given that I'm doing the GoDaddy shenanigans. And so boom, we put in our macaroon, and we are now ready to go. So it could take a little bit of time for the DNS records to do what's called propagating across the internet. So that could take, in theory, up to 24 to 48 hours, but usually it's faster than that. And so I have waited for all that to propagate. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to my Lightning node so that you can see my balance here. So Lightning Wallet, 139,833 sats is currently in my Lightning Wallet. attached to my node. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to bring up a different wallet that supports Lightning addresses. So here I am in my wallet of Satoshi. I am going to hit send, and I'm going to hit the keyboard icon so that I am brought to the area where I can put in the Lightning address. Now, this is where it gets a little funky. Ideally, I would do the following. You could put literally anything. It could be me. It could be whatever. It could be anything. And ideally, I would do ianmajor.xyz, right? But you'll see that this will fail to decode. And the reason I suspect is because my domain forwarding isn't fully propagated or something is wrong with it, right? Because go back to the issue we were having in GoDaddy. Because we couldn't just put the @ symbol for the CNAME record, we had to put in a subdomain such as the www. And so now what I'm trying to do is have GoDaddy just forward traffic from just straight up ianmajor.xyz to www.ianmajor.xyz, at which point everything would work. So for some reason, that domain forwarding does not appear to be working. And so what will work in this case, if I come back, is I'll put in me at www.ianmajor.xyz. So if I put in that full sort of subdomain that I have everything hooked up to, again, I don't know why GoDaddy is not able to forward just the normal ianmajor.xyz to that, because I do have that set up. But in any case, let's go ahead and create the invoice. And boom, as you can see, we are now presented with the option to, specify the number of sats that we want to send to this custom Lightning address. And so I'm going to hit send. And so you will see the payment was sent. And you can see that that balance has updated in my Lightning node. So there you go. We sent some sats to our very own non-custodial or self-custodial Lightning address. Again, I wanted to show a method for how you can do this. Definitely check out the following page from Darthcoin. This is a fantastic resource. Darthcoin just puts out so much content on a variety of helpful topics, but this gives you a even broader kind of flavor for how you can do stuff with Lightning addresses. So I would highly recommend checking that out. And so again, if that felt like a lot, it is, right? That's the whole kind of point of this video is sort of, we are not there yet in terms of this being very, very easy to do. And so now let's talk about some of the different efforts underway to try and make this easier. Now, what's next in this whole discussion? One of the big holy grails is making self-custodial Lightning addresses feasible on mobile, right? When you think about accessibility, all the billions of people that have some sort of mobile device, making the process of sending Bitcoin to one another as easy as sending an email and having that all be self-custodial, that is huge. The challenge is a fewfold. You have this sort of web server piece that you need to solve for, and you also have to solve for the fact that the Lightning node, either standalone or embedded on your device through whatever wallet you're using, is always online. And so, for example, Hampus, the creator of Blixt Wallet, which is excellent. I have done a whole tutorial on Blixt Wallet, but that was quite some time ago, and Hampus is just a monster, constantly pushing out new features. So if you're looking for like a really, truly cutting-edge non-custodial Lightning wallet, Blixt Wallet is superb. But he's also creating something called Lightning Box. And so what this does is it basically holds the sats if the wallet is offline, and then the next time you come online, you get the sats. So technically not fully sort of non-custodial. However, with Android, this actually becomes a non-issue because the wallet can stay online and answer incoming requests. So when someone's trying to pay your Lightning address, your node, your wallet is online, can answer that request without there needing to be any custodial element to this Lightning Box solution. So that is very interesting for folks that are using Android. I think it becomes a little more problematic for folks using iPhone. Super Testnet has created something called ZapLocker, which looks very, very interesting. This basically wouldn't even require running a node. And so as you can see, zaplocker.com, get a non-custodial Lightning address in 3 steps. You log in with Nostr, choose a username, and receive payments. So that's really, really cool. I might do a completely separate tutorial on that. Do note that I don't think when it says choose a username, I think that would be like ian@zapblocker.com. I don't think you're going to get your custom domain, which is what a lot of people want. But that looks like a very, very promising solution that folks should check out. We know that Zeus is also working on a way for you to have a self-custodial Lightning address through their Olympus LSP. So that's going to be very cool. Again, I've done a whole tutorial on Zeus, which I think is, again, another just absolutely incredible option for self-custodial Lightning. And then we shouldn't forget that something like Bolt 12 does in some ways help with this broader theme of making the Lightning experience easier in terms of not having to create the invoice, right? Having some sort of static reusable QR code that you can use to pay people. That is part of what Bolt 12 can bring, and it's going to bring that natively to the Lightning protocol itself so that you don't have to futz around with the web server and the LN URL pay, etc. So it is worth noting that, but again, that's probably a topic for another day as well. Bolt 12 is making good progress. It already has some, early kind of experimental implementations. There's a lot of work being done on it, but it still may be a little bit of time before we see that ubiquitously across the network. So pretty cool stuff. I'm excited to monitor these different efforts and see which of these is really going to take root. And importantly, if you happen to be, more technical, or maybe you're a developer, or maybe you just have an idea for this, based on some of what you've used, the Human Rights Foundation actually has a 2 Bitcoin bounty out for cracking this nut of self-custodial Lightning addresses on mobile. With all that, let's go ahead and conclude today's video. All right, so today we talked about the kind of latest state of self-custodial Lightning addresses, and we also took a look at the specific tutorial for using a bridge server to create your very own custom self-custodial Lightning address. But I'm curious to hear, what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on both what we covered today in the tutorial, as well as some of the other efforts that we spotlighted that are underway? Have you used any of those? Have you thought about any of those? Are there others you'd like to see future content on? Let me know in the comments down below. But I hope you found this valuable and insightful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. Use the share feature underneath this video. That really does help get this to a broader audience. And if you were so enamored with this content, you want to donate some sats to a pleb, which really does help me continue to make this content, you can do so in a number of ways. If you happen to have the Get Albeat browser extension, you can just click that and it'll automatically detect you're watching my channel, which is pretty cool. You can now send sats to the custom Lightning address that I created today. I'll also have my custodial Lightning address on the final page momentarily, along with my Strike account. But we'll go ahead and leave things here. As a reminder, my friends, every sat counts. And until next time, I'll see you then.